Wii Sports. An amazing game that defined— no, not that Wii Sports, this Wii Sports. You know, the Wii Sports that launched with the Wii U, but you had to pay a monthly membership to play? That's right, I'm talking about Wii Sports Club. I understand if you haven't played this version of Wii Sports before, but it is still the same amazing game we all love, with a few differences. Now, if you're like most casual gamers who play Wii Sports, then you probably load up the game with a couple of friends and mess around until a fist fight breaks out. However, if you're like me, a sweaty god tier gamer, then you want to grind towards something, feel that sense of achievement. Well, look no further. The reason I'm playing Wii Sports Club today instead of the original is because of these things right here called stamps. Each sport has its own list of stamps that require you to do some sort of task in order to acquire it. This is the perfect excuse for all of us Wii Sports enthusiasts to grind the game. Though a lot of these stamps you can get by just playing the game normally, some of them require you to do some outrageous things in order to get it, which can make you so angry to the point where you just want to rip a 65-inch 4K Samsung TV in half. I mean seriously, some of these stamps are nearly impossible. I even looked up online if people had some of these stamps and I found very little results. So today we're going to be going over those hard Wii Sports Club achievements and you can determine how hard they really are. You may be able to cheat some of these stamps with some friends, but that's boring and not nearly as rewarding, so we're going to be doing it the hard way. And that requires you to actually have friends. If you enjoy the video, like and subscribe, and let's get into it. Let's start off with a banger, tennis, and there's a couple of stamps that will leave you frustrated. The first stamp is Forehand Master. Implied in the name, you must win a game by only using forehand shots, meaning you cannot use a backhand shot once. As you could guess, this makes a lot of your shots really awkward to hit and stay in bounds. Shots where you would normally use a backhand shot, you basically just need to swing really late so the ball stays inside the court. Also, if you're using a front me as well and doing this can cause the ball to do a weird wobbly thing in the air and the opponent can slam it down at Mach speed. This may take a couple of tries, especially because sometimes there's no possible way to hit the ball without using a backhand, but once you get the technique down, this one's not that bad. Now we have probably the most stressful stamp, which is Nail Biter. This requires you and your opponent to go back to deuce 10 times. This one isn't necessarily hard, but can be really annoying because one unpredictable move can set you all the way back to the beginning. First, you need to score 6 points on your opponent, which can be tough if they're higher level. Then you must let them score 6 points. Once you get to the first deuce, you then need to score a point, then let your opponent score 1 in return. You gotta do this 10 times, so try to keep track. But anything can happen. Maybe you get scored on twice by the AI and lose. Maybe you need to give them the point, but you have to serve and accidentally deliver a power shot, making them miss, or maybe you lose track of how many deuces you've gotten to and stop too early. If any of these things happen, go ahead and press that restart button. The next tough badge is 3K Runner. You have to make your opponent run 3 kilometers in one game. It's a bit tough because there's no way to track how far they've run, so you just have to guess when enough is enough. So what I did was play the 3-game match because obviously it'll take the longest. I then tried to hit the ball the farthest distance away from the AI, forcing her to run back and forth. I also let them win 2 games so I had more time to do this. Lastly, I kept going back and forth to a deuce to give myself even more time. After all this, I got the stamp on my first try, but man was that the longest game of Wii Sports Tennis I've ever played. The final stamp is the Rattlesnake Reflexes stamp, which requires you to return a smash ball with the front me. This one definitely took a couple of tries because of how quickly you need to react. But I found out if you do the strat I mentioned earlier to make the ball wobble, once your opponent slams the ball down, just start violently swinging the Wii remote and you'll hit the ball easily. It might not be the most realistic, but it gets the job done. Next is another banger, which is bowling. This game is so fun when you're just messing around relaxed, but if you're going for the stamps, you might get pretty stressed and perhaps even sore because of how much you'll be swinging your arms. Like guys, I promise my left arm is bigger than my right arm because of Wii bowling, not for any other reason. Anyways, the first semi-hard stamp is to hit a split, which is knocking 2 pins over that have a gap between them. It can be tough trying to get the angle just right, but I mean if you're going for the other stamps as well, then you'll hit this eventually, maybe even on accident. The Pro Bowler stamp requires you to get 200 points or more in the 10-pin game, which means you need to get a strike or a spare on pretty much every frame. So if you don't get a strike in the first roll, make sure you have the ability to snipe those remaining pins. Not hard enough for you? Well, try getting the perfect game stamp. As you could guess, you need to roll a perfect 300 points, which means strikes all the way to the end. I've done this on other Wii Sports games with a technique I learned online, but I don't know if it's because of the motion controls because of how precise you need to be, or if they changed the mechanics, but I had a hard time consistently getting strikes with my strategy. But if you can find a strategy to get a strike every time that works for you, then this stamp is very achievable, but it may take a good amount of attempts. Next is the Straight Shooter badge, which I honestly thought was not going to be that difficult, but boy was I wrong. You have to score 180 points or more without moving left or right or adjusting the angle. So the default position it sets you in, you have to stay there for every roll, so you really have to rely on your curve game. And because this game uses motion controls and is much more sensitive than the original Wii Sports, the slightest difference in curving your Wii remote can make each throw inconsistent from the last. And because 200 points is pretty much a strike or a spare for every frame, 180 points does not allow for much wiggle room for you not to get a strike or a spare. I tried for an hour and a half to get this stamp during recording, and after a solid run with a few mistakes, you wouldn't believe how disappointed I was when I saw 177 points pop up on my screen. I actually think I fell to my knees. But I was determined, so I came back the next day and got this. That's right, I got exactly 180 points and I was so relieved. But now my arm actually feels like a wet noodle, but it was so worth it. The barrier teaser stamp I honestly feel is much harder though, because at least I had a chance with the last stamp. You need to score 150 points or more in spin control while nicking a barrier with every throw. I mean, this one seems inhuman to get. Each throw needs to be mathematically lined up perfectly so that you can just barely hit the barrier, but the ball keeps going to hit the pins. Even if you nick the barrier and hit 9 pins, your next throw still needs to nick the barrier even if the last pin is nowhere near the barrier. Even if you wanted to take the 9 pins and move on to the next frame, you can't just throw a gutter ball because you still need to hit the barrier. There's a few things that make this stamp much harder than it needs to be. The better you do in this game mode, the harder each frame gets, but because you're trying to get the best score possible, it's inevitable. So now, not only do you have to line up each throw perfectly, you now need to time each throw because there are moving barriers, which is really frustrating. Secondly, because the Wii Remote's motion controls are much more precise, each throw can vastly differ from the last one, even if they're lined up in the same exact position. So if your first throw hits the barrier too much and stopped your ball, the next throw in the same exact spot can miss the barrier entirely. I mean, if you can get this, I will give you one of my legs. Lastly, we have a stamp that can be hard if you don't know what you're doing, but thanks to the internet, we know exactly how to do it. In the 100 pin bowling game, you need to hit a secret strike. In the exact same way you saw in my last video when I tested the hardest Wii Sports Resort stamps, you need to roll your ball on one of these barriers and stay on it until it eventually hits one of those red buttons. Then all the pins will just suddenly collapse like they're in Toy Story and Andy just walked in. It may take a couple of attempts, but I have faith you can all get this one. Now we have golf, and I am so sorry in advance because I am terrible at this game. So there's a couple of stamps that require you to score under par, but the hardest one would probably be the Birdie Watcher stamp. This stamp requires you to get 9 under par in the 9-hole or 18-hole course. So if you want to get this stamp done quicker, you're going to want to play the 9-hole course, but that can be much harder because you need to average a birdie or better for every hole. So if you want a bit of wiggle room, then you should probably choose to play the 18-hole course. Plus, you can get the Birdie of Prey stamp at the same time, which requires you to go under par in the 18-hole course, which you're already going for anyways. Next is the Chippin' Wizard stamp, which makes you chip the ball into the hole from outside the green. I honestly didn't think I had a chance at getting this stamp because of how dog doo-doo I am, but I got really close on this shot right here. Even though I missed, I actually still got a stamp from this shot, which is the Flag It Down stamp. You have to stop the ball's momentum by hitting the flag. I was pleasantly surprised when I got this. Next is the Fairway or Bust stamp. You have to get the ball in every hole without straying off the fairway, fringe, or green. That means you can't land in the water, bunkers, or even the rough. I don't know if this is as hard for you guys as it is for me, but because of the crazy winds and my inability to hit the ball straight, I was getting pretty frustrated with this one. But on the plus side, you can get this stamp on a 3-hole course, and you don't need to get under a specific number, so you can just take your time and take a bunch of smaller shots to get to the hole. But don't take too many shots or you'll be forced to give up. For the Power Putter stamp, you need to putt the ball into the hole from 82 feet away or farther. I don't know why 82 feet, but yeah. I legitimately thought this one was impossible because I read 82 yards instead of feet. I'm glad that's not the case because I'd have to be a Sasquatch on performance enhancements to be able to putt a ball from 82 yards out. But this stamp is still hard to get because of how accurate you need to be, especially with the wind and terrain. One of the stamps requires you to get an albatross, which is making it in the hole with 3 under par. This is rare in normal golf and in Wii Sports Golf. I don't know which hole you can get this on, but I sure couldn't find it. Even if I did find it, I am definitely not getting an albatross. The hole-in-one stamp obviously requires you to get a hole-in-one. Not only is it already pretty freaking hard to get a hole-in-one, there's only a few courses where this is possible, so if there are any holes before them, you need to play through those every time you attempt this, which can be very annoying. I mean, you literally only get one shot to do this. Lastly, we have the secret shot stamp. On the first hole of the Lakeside Course C course, there's the Wii U logo to the right. You need to land on the inner part of the U to get this stamp. It can be a bit tricky to get your ball to land here, but you can get as close to it as possible and just reset if the wind is too harsh. Now onto one of my favorite sports to play, which is baseball. The first hard stamp is an absolute doozy. The 3-for-all stamp requires you to retire your opponent's side with only 3 pitches. So that means you have only 1 pitch for each of the 3 batters. I was a bit confused at first on how to get this, but what you have to do is pitch your one and only ball perfectly so that the AI will hit it high up so your outfielders can catch it. You have to do this 3 times in a row. If you throw the ball too easy, then the AI can just hit a home run, but if you throw the ball too difficult, then they'll just hit a foul ball or get a strike. I could not for the life of me find where to throw the ball or how much power to put on it. They either hit a home run or missed the ball entirely. If you guys know how to get this stamp without using a friend to help you, let me know down in the comments. The next hard stamp is the victory lap one. You need to have all 9 of your batters get up to bat and cycle back to your first within 1 inning. This might not be too tough for all of you who are decent at baseball, but man, I have lost my touch. I kept hitting stupid ground balls to the infield or pop flies that can easily be caught. The nice thing is that 2 of your batters can go out as long as they stepped up to bat and you don't get a 3rd out. The last tough stamp is to hit a single, a double, and a triple all in one game. Hitting a single and a double is easy enough, but what the heck constitutes a triple? Like, watch how long this play is. If this isn't a triple, then I need someone from the crowd to hop onto the field and start tying the outfielder's shoelaces together for me to have a chance. For the final sport, we have the infamous boxing. Most of the stamps here are actually pretty achievable, which was a relief because the other sports were kicking my butt. The first tough stamp is the fast fist stamp. You have to KO your opponent in the first round. You need a bit of luck in order to get this stamp. First, you only have a short amount of time in the first round, and you most likely need to knock them down twice in order to KO them. So make sure you let those fists fly and connect all of them. Even if you do knock them down twice in the first round, there's a chance they might get up depending on what level they are, so you're going to want to get this stamp out of the way in the earlier levels. Also, if they're a higher level, then they're going to be harder to knock down in general. For the comeback champ stamp, you need to win a game where you get knocked down twice before you even knock them down once. I had a real hard time trying to get the AI to knock me down because they would just refuse to punch. So I beat a couple of opponents so I can get a harder one that'll actually throw punches at me, but then the AI just started destroying me and I didn't even have a chance. I could not find a good middle ground. The last hard stamp is actually not that bad. You must win a match by only using jabs. This can be tough if your opponent is a higher level, but is actually pretty easy if you do this stamp during the lower levels. And the single most hardest achievement in Wii Sports history is beating this mofo in a fist fight. And there you have it, the hardest stamps in Wii Sports Club. Look, I'm a god gamer, okay? But I'll admit it, some of these stamps are a bit out of my skill range. If you love Wii Sports but don't just want to play for nothing, grinding these stamps out is the perfect excuse. We're almost to 1,000 subs, so a subscribe to the channel would be very nice, and let me know down in the comments if I missed anything, any pro tips, or any other video you would like to see. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later. Deuces!